Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm just waking up here inside of the truck camper, which, if you're new to this channel, is my permanent home now. I live in this truck camper with my husband and 3 dogs, and we chose this lifestyle because it's pretty awesome and it has a lot of trade-offs, but most of them are totally beneficial to health and happiness. So I do now live on the road full time. And I am now sharing from my many years of living this way, sharing these experiences here on the channel, here at Paradise on Pennies. Everything from the adventure, the ups and downs, and also a lot of tips along the way that I've learned from living this way. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that are now thinking that they want to do the same, they want to live on the road, but you're maybe in the process of preparing for that lifestyle change and that adventure. And there are some really great things you can do to prepare. And that's what I want to talk about today. So today's video it's geared kind of towards the ladies, and it's geared especially towards some of those prospective solo ladies that want a van life or live on the road in some form. And you just want to get out there, and that's awesome. But having said that, this video is not exclusive to them. If you are a couple like we are and you're going to live on the road, these tips will be very helpful for you too. Guys, there's a lot of good takeaways in here for you as well. And any other assemblage of people and rig, there's plenty of tips in here if you are preparing to hit the road. So let's jump right into them. And I want to start with, well, I'm going to list briefly some skills that I think you will probably find handy once you get out there. So if you're in the preparation process and you're wondering, well, what are some things I can do to start preparing? I'm not ready to get out there yet, but in a couple weeks, a couple months, maybe even a couple years, I plan to be full-time on the road, maybe even part-time. If you plan to be on the road, take note of these skills. They're going to help you. They might even save you when you're out there. Okay, so the first one that's pretty important would be vehicle knowledge. So if you're hitting the road, you're going to be now living in a vehicle. Your home will take some form of something like this, a truck camper, maybe even a van that you've converted, some maybe even in an SUV. That's how we started out. We had a little Ford Escape, and we did live in it for several years. We kind of converted it into a bed and everything and lived in it. And it was totally awesome. Not a lot of space, so definitely a lifestyle you'll have to get used to, but we did that. Now, with the different vehicle arrangements, you'll want to figure out which rig's best for you. We do have a whole bunch of videos here where we recorded our process of trying to figure out the best rig, because we started off with the SUV because it's what we had. But once it got older and we knew we wanted to stay on the road, we needed to figure out what would be the next correct rig for us. And so we went through this excruciating process of trying to pick our next home on wheels. And we recorded that whole process. So if you are in that stage of the game, I highly recommend looking for those videos where we go through, there's several of them, choosing the best rig for you. It is a really important process and decision to be made. So check those out if you're interested. But once you figure out which rig you're going to go with, whether that be the classic VW van, an Airstream, a cargo van, a truck camper like this, some arrangement, or just an SUV, figure out which vehicle you are leaning towards. And once you get your vehicle, I would highly recommend getting to know that vehicle as best as possible, because it is now not only your form of transportation, but also your home. So the more we know about that vehicle, the better off we'll be, right? We can anticipate issues, repairs, understand why it's making that funky sound, understand if we're being overcharged at a repair shop. So it makes us better in terms of safety and our budget and all of those really important things when you live on the road. So, I mean, you can start off by reading your manual for your vehicle. You can go online and watch YouTube videos about your specific vehicle type and model and learn as much as you can. And sorry, ladies, but we definitely get the crappy end of the stick on this one, because most of us, it's just our culture or whatever, but it's most of the vehicle knowledge usually goes to the guys when growing up. So we don't always learn as much about vehicles as maybe we'd like to. So some of us may have a bit of work to do to get to know vehicles in general, let alone our specific rig. So yeah, and maybe some of you guys also need to brush up on the knowledge too. There's plenty that, we don't always get all the best information about vehicles. And if that's the case, even if you do, that specific rig, you probably don't know too much about. And if you're doing something that's a little more on the unique line, like a bus or an older vehicle, then you really want to know as much as you can about it. So as much vehicle knowledge, that's a great place to start because it's now home. And going down the line from there, just in general, you probably want to really start thinking about budgeting and financing. That's a skill you want to have. And even if you think you're good at it, really sit down, make a budget. I talk about this extensively here. In fact, we have a whole playlist devoted to finances for the potential nomad. So check that one out too. You might get a lot of good tips that you can apply to your new lifestyle. So just to make it simple, at least sit down and start writing out your budget. Start thinking about what types of things you're going to need to cover, and just start practicing maybe in your life that is not your van life yet, but your traditional life. Start practicing, keeping track of some of those bills and expenses, and think about how that's going to apply once you're actually on the road. Maybe make yourself a budget file. In an upcoming video, I'm actually going to talk about this in much detail, so you'll want to check that out. And I'm going to provide you guys with an actual budget file that you can use, so you don't have to recreate the wheel there. You'll have a file that you can just slap your numbers into. So stay tuned, watch for that one. I think that's going to be really helpful, I hope. So, okay, let's keep going along the line. What other skills would be helpful if you're going to be a nomad? Think about just other little skills that you can quickly acquire and you can work on again in your home setting now. Another one would be maybe sewing or repair work, something along those lines, even simple stuff. It's something you can learn at least to do easy, simple sewing and repairs, but you might even work on some more advanced skills. But think about how you'll do this again in a road setting. You'll have maybe limited supplies. Maybe you'll still have a junk drawer. Everybody has a junk drawer in a house. You might even have a junk drawer in your road life rig. So you want to keep things like a little sewing kit and maybe some thread and maybe like little patches or Velcro or something along those lines, so you can do some quick repairs. Again, this is going to help the budget nomad. And what you'll find on this particular channel about nomading is we really focus on doing it on a budget. Nearly anyone can go out there if you have millions of dollars and just live, and if something goes bad, you just replace it, buy a new one. And so the tricks and solutions aren't going to be that challenging if you have tons of money. But if you're like us and you're like, okay, we have to stay within a given budget, then you're going to want the skills that really help you stay in that budget. And I'd say sewing and repairing is definitely along those lines. And you'll find that most of our tips and things we talk about here are along the lines of doing things on a budget. Or how about reading maps? I know we all have our GPSs and our maps on our phones, and it makes it really easy to navigate. But just think about situations where you might still need to be able to read a map, or just familiarize yourself with topography, maybe topo maps. If you're going to be hiking as a hobby out there, then you might already be familiar with topo maps, or if it's a new hobby, you're going to want to get familiar with topo maps. But just in general, being able to read the topography is a really good skill to have in navigating and understanding your surroundings and figuring out where you need to go. Also with that, if you are a country kid, you might want to start considering navigating through cities. I don't think anyone likes driving through a city. If you do, I don't understand how you can enjoy it. I lived in a fairly bustling city for a while, and driving through the city was like the most dreaded thing. I hated it. So yeah, if you're not used to driving in really busy areas or cities, you might want to start thinking about that too, because you're probably not going to be able to avoid it if you're covering ground with your moving around as a nomad, and you might have to make your way into them. You could try to avoid them. That's great. But sometimes you might have to, again, navigate on your routes, and you want to be comfortable with getting to places, especially if you're a solo traveler. Now, you can flip that around and say if you're the city folk, then you might want to get yourself familiar with driving on back roads, country roads, 2-track roads. If you plan to do a lot more boondocking style camping, living on the road as a boondocker, then if you're going to want to get to more remote places, you're going to have to be more comfortable with these back roads and maybe some 4-wheel driving. So that's something to think about. And you can start preparing just by starting to explore around in regions and get your comfort level built up. Also, on that note, boondocking. If you, like I said, if you want to do boondocking, maybe this is a great way to live on the road on a budget. Boondocking. You don't have to pay for camping, and even though that sounds small, like $5-10, maybe sometimes $35 a night, that's going to add up pretty quickly. And so when you're thinking of your budget, if you can get your lodging or your camping fee to be zero, that really saves you for the year. So, I mean, we love it. We like getting out there. We like being more entrenched in nature and kind of getting our quiet time. So that's totally our style. If it's something you want to do, but you're not really used to doing it, you could just start taking some weekend trips, and once you get your rig, you can start doing some trial runs. So I highly recommend doing that too. Just start getting comfortable, and that you can couple that with the last one, where you can kind of get on some back roads and figure out what's your style. Other things, we do a lot of foraging as well here, and you'll see I start to do videos where I talk about my foraging adventures, and it's just a really nice skill, again, from the budgeting perspective, but also from the healthy perspective, and even just as a hobby, it's a really fun, free thing to do. You'll probably want to pick yourself up a good foraging book for this. You do have to be careful with foraging. You can't just go out there picking anything and eating it. It's a good way to get sick. Foraging book. I do a review of a Pacific Northwest foraging book on the channel here, so look at my book reviews. That one has been really great. I have a couple I've used, but that's my favorite one, and you'll probably benefit from that as well if foraging is something you want to incorporate in your journey. Speaking of food, I highly recommend getting more comfortable with maybe cooking on fire, especially if you want to save money. This will save you on stuff like propane. If you're going to be cooking your food on a stove, that's great, and we do it for the indoor rainy, windy days. We cook inside, that's what we have a stove for, but we cook on the fire as much as we can because, again, it saves us. We don't have to buy the fuel. Plus, cooking on a fire is just awesome, and the food's delicious, and you can burn it and not care. But it does take a little skill because the heat is different when you're cooking on a fire. And whatever type of style of cooking on a fire you're going to use, you'll probably be looking at something like a cast iron. That's what we use. We use a cast iron pot, and they have pans and pots in different selections. But if you don't have one, you might want to consider cast iron. It's great for cooking on the fire, and it has good longevity. So it's something you can take with you through your journeys forever. And but get familiar with cooking with a cast iron because it is a little different. So it's something you can go out and get. You can get yourself a cast iron, and you can start cooking with it ahead of time and getting comfortable with it. Some people get frustrated with it, so it takes some time to learn and be more comfortable with it, but it's totally doable, and we cook a lot of our meals on cast iron on a fire. With that, just campfire in general, building a good campfire would be something you could start practicing if it's something you haven't done and you're going to boondock in a camp style and start cooking your food on it. A lot of people go out and they make giant fire pits. We see them all over the place. It's great for sitting around and partying at camp. It's not so great for cooking. So start practicing building a more practical fire pit, something that gets the right amount of air, something that's small enough that you can sit a grate across, put your cast iron on, and cook on it. A cook campfire is totally different than a fun campfire. So, yeah, you could practice your campfire building skills. In addition to those types of skills, something that might be a little more useful would be social skills. Hone your social skills. And you might be thinking, I don't need that. I'm a social butterfly. I'm a social diva in my neighborhood. But when you get on the road, it's a little different than being in your typical comfort zone where you know all of the same people, you kind of see the same people in the work routine or same friends and family. But when you get on the road, you might be traveling from place to place and meeting new people that have completely different cultural backgrounds, span different ages, have different interests. And that's one of the fun parts of living on the road. That's one of the parts we really like, is meeting all these different people. But it's totally different than what you might be used to. And so you want to be comfortable with talking to people of all these different backgrounds and have fun with it. And you don't want to just, end up like reclusing yourself and kind of be like, I don't, know any of these people. You want to know how to talk to them and share your stories with them. You're going to get a lot of cool stories now that you're on the road. So you're probably going to want to share. We love sharing our stories with people. It's so much fun. That's part of the reason why we do the channel as well. But when we meet people on the road, it's really fun to do the back and forth of sharing all our stories, especially someone who lived similarly or lives this way as well. But we also like talking to people that have all kinds of different backgrounds. So maybe practicing that is a good skill for some of you. And with the social side of it, there's a safety element as well, in that you also want to, while you want to share your story, you also want to be thinking about the right moments to actually hold back on information. I talk about this in the video where I go over safety, and I recommend not always telling everyone everything about yourself and your rig as a safety precaution. So you'll have to start learning to read people and understanding who's really a safe person to share that information with and when to hold back. Now, since you'll be traveling and meeting many different people, it might actually be a good skill if you don't already know a second language, or a third or a fourth or whatever. But maybe learn a new language as a new skill. This opens your horizon to being able to talk to people that speak different languages as well. And I don't know where you'll be traveling. Maybe you'll be traveling. We're based down of the United States. We mostly boondock in the Western United States and some of Western Canada as well. Primarily that's our region. So totally North America bound traveling. You can't really get beyond that without getting into things like flying or shipping or sending your car or whatever. So we travel around Western North America primarily. And we have done a little bit close to Mexico. We've traveled into Mexico briefly, but we haven't done real extensive traveling into Mexico, but some nomads do. There are some cost factors there with vehicle insurance and safety and whatever else. But it's totally doable, and if you plan to do that, knowing Spanish would be fantastic. We've actually been learning Spanish anyway because of potential travels, and just we like learning new skills all the time. So if you're working on building out a rig, say an SUV, building a platform bed in the back, we did that in our Ford Escape, and we did document our building experience. We did it for really cheap, so if you're looking for a build, check out that here as well. We show our build out from in our Ford Escape, and it's a great cheap way to get started on the road. If you're going to do that, really you don't need like a ton of skills per se, but basic level carpentry might be helpful for you to just kind of think about your build and make it work for you. Again, you don't need anything crazy. Check out our video and you can see some of the simple applications you can apply to your build. But brushing up on those skills is helpful. You might need to do a repair, or you might want to redo your build once you get on the road. Ramsey talks about this in a couple videos, in that maybe doing some initial, before you get on the road, just kind of some trial runs would be good, because you're probably going to want to change your build. And if that's the case, then yeah, do some trial runs so that you can at least iron out the details and then do your build. And hopefully you won't need to do too many changes when you get out there, but you might anyway. And having some of those skills along the way will be super helpful. So a few final notes of things, skills to work on. Living with less. This is a totally different lifestyle than traditional. Even if you live small traditionally, you're now going to be living in a really small space. You don't have a lot of room for stuff. You can't take everything with you. So sort of a minimalism approach. And you can start applying that in your lifestyle now. Start living with less so that you're comfortable with the transition. And with that, start living without luxuries, because with living with less, you have to give up luxuries. You may not have the coffee pot to make your coffee for you right away when you get up in the morning. Your rig will probably not be temperature controlled. I know you can get into some fancier situations there and have temperature control, maybe in an RV. You can have heating and cooling, but you're probably not going to always have the temperature control that you have in a conventional house setting. And we surely don't in ours, because we don't have heating and cooling. It still works out really great, but that means the temperature fluctuates with the outdoor temperature. And sometimes we wake up and it's chilly, and sometimes it gets a little warm, although the truck camper has been a saving there. It doesn't get too bad in here because we can open it up and get some air. But like I said, that comfort level, that perfect temperature, that waking up at that temperature may not be an option. And even if it is, there's going to definitely be other luxuries you'll have to leave behind. You can't just probably walk into your shower every morning. Again, we're a budget nomad channel here. We don't get showers every day. Sometimes we go a long time without a shower. And even if we do get to clean ourselves off, it's not always a traditional shower setting anyway. It might be like jumping into a river. And if you're going to be like that, then, or if you're just not on millions, you're not going to be staying in a hotel every night. So you won't get that ideal shower every day. So be thinking about that. Maybe go a few days without a shower in your traditional setting if you're not used to it, and get comfortable with not having those luxuries all the time. Little things too, like maybe just not having your towel after you shower, just air dry. And you might be thinking like, that's silly, but it's along the lines of these little, it adds up, all these little luxuries that you have in the conventional house setting. And you might be thinking, why wouldn't I have a towel? Well, it's just an example of one thing, but hey, maybe you only bring 3 towels, you have limited space. And in our situation, if we have 3 towels and they're dirty, or the dogs get in the mud and we have to use something to clean the dogs off, suddenly we're towelless. And that means that I might just have to air dry. Honestly, when it's a nice warm day, we try to stay in good weather anyway. I like just jumping in a river and air drying anyway. I'm all about just being in nature, all natural and everything. So air drying is not so bad for me. But that's another point, is hair, ladies. If you're going to have hair, think about what you're going to do with that. I just don't do anything with mine at this point. It's easier. I don't wear makeup. You might want to get used to that kind of stuff too. Again, I guess I'll put them in the luxury category. It's really not all that practical when you live on the road to have to worry about all that maintenance as a lady. And we've kind of been sold and advertised to anyway there. So leaving it behind is great for your inside and your outside. And you won't have to stress about worrying about where to put that stuff in your limited space. So, these are some things you can work on and get more comfortable with. All right, so that just about does it for all the things I think you could be working on for skills to prepare for getting out there as a nomad, and maybe it'll help you get more confidence to get out there as a nomad. The only other thing I would add is if you're bringing a dog along with you, you might want to start thinking about adjusting the dog as well. Maybe some training, or just acclimating them with the idea of living on the road if they're not already used to it. So get your dog ready too. And I think with all of those skills, you guys should be fully set to get out there on the road and not have to learn the hard way some of the things you might need along the way. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, give the video a like for me. Let others know that it's useful information. And if you want to see anything else here from the channel, The Paradise on Pennies, simply subscribe and you will see it in your feed, and you'll know when we post new stuff, which is coming down the line all the time. We appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll talk to you guys next time. And if you have any other tips to add, feel free and drop them. Maybe others can benefit in this community from some more ideas. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye.